Hi everyone, Miss Lerner here. I'm here to discuss some of the major psychological disorders, the first disorders we will be talking about in this class. Just so you know, major disorders are going to be disorders that we consider to be acute disorders. Acute disorders meaning that they have a discernible onset and duration. The most distinguishable feature of a psychological disorder is its dysfunctionality. In some capacity, an acute psychological disorder is going to interfere with your functionality at work, in relationships, just in life's progress. Okay, so let's go through some of these. Now, these are going to be based on the DSM-5. Okay, the DSM is the kind of the holy Bible of psychiatry. It is going to classify the disorders according to their type, and it is going to lay out a symptom pattern or a variety of different diagnostic criteria that people have to meet in order to um, be diagnosed with that disorder. Okay, so first off, we have major depressive disorder. Major depressive disorder is going to be just a mood disorder or what we call an affective disorder. Now, usually in the English language, the word affect is a verb. The only time it is a noun is your affect. Okay, your affect is sort of your emotionality to the world. Okay, the way you present your emotions. If we say that someone has a flat affect, it means that they really aren't expressing their emotions at all. Okay, that it's just kind of for some reason bizarre or muted. Okay, so let's go through the causes first. Um, Basically, with all of these disorders, there's going to be a genetic predisposition because psychological disorders are biopsychosocial phenomena. And genetic predisposition is going to, of course, give you the possibility of getting the disorder, but it doesn't necessarily mean you're going to get the disorder. So these disorders and the types of disorders do tend to run in families, okay? But just because just because a family member has one of these disorders does not necessarily mean that you are going to develop it as well. Okay, so we have genetic predisposition, high stress levels, anxiety, traumatic experiences, hormone or neurotransmitter imbalances. So, people who do really well on antidepressants, that's because their neurotransmitters, specifically a neurotransmitter called serotonin, is very low. Okay, and those those antidepressants are going to work to make the levels higher. Okay, what are some symptoms of major depression? Well, there's going to be overwhelming sadness, fatigue, isolation, changes in weight, loss or gain, sleep changes, insomnia or hypersomnia, too little or too much, difficulty concentrating, headaches. And usually we say that there's going to be some sort of suicidal ideation at some point, which is just a fancy term for suicidal thoughts or thinking about the possibility of suicide. Okay. Generally speaking, we say that these symptoms have to occur for more than 2 weeks consecutively without a specific cause. Okay, so if something really traumatic happens to me, I'm probably going to experience these symptoms, but I'm not going to meet the classification of a major depressive disorder because it's something different. I'm going through a period of grief. I'm going through a trauma, something that has really interfered with my life. Okay, now if a year from that you're still experiencing these symptoms, obviously that's when you would start to meet the diagnosis. Now, why is it that like mood and sleep and food and sex drive they all go together? It's because they are all controlled by the same neurotransmitters, and when one of these neurotransmitters is low, like I said, serotonin, or in other cases norepinephrine, the other purposes of that neurotransmitter are going to be affected as well. Okay, so um, moving on to bipolar disorder. Bipolar disorder is a mood or affective disorder as well. Okay, it is going to again have genetic causes. It may have the biological trait the helm here, or hormonal problems, some environmental factors. And one of the biggest triggers for mania or a manic episode is substance use. Okay, because when you take a drug outside of your body, it's acting like a neurotransmitter. And since it's acting like a neurotransmitter, many times it's going to, you know, change your mood or your psychological disposition. Okay. So just as a baseline, bipolar disorder, okay, you're gonna have the depressive period, which we just went over. You see the major depressive disorder symptoms. And then you're also going to have alternating periods of feeling happy or euphoric. Okay, so during mania, we say that you're easily distracted, overly self-confident, that you have impaired judgment, that you're very talkative, you talk at a mile a minute. You might engage in impulsive behavior. You may not eat or sleep. You may use substances. You may be dangerous to yourself and other people. Okay. Some people say, oh, well, mania is great. You're euphoric. You feel like you could complete anything. But there is like sort of a touch of psychosis in mania as well that makes people very dangerous, like I said, to themselves and others. Okay. And another major problem with bipolar disorder is, once you get out of this manic sort of episode, you're slipping into like the real depressive piece. And that the juxtaposition is what is really painful for people. Okay, they don't live their whole lives manic. Now, you can have various types of bipolar disorder. If you take AP Psych, we'll go over that type of stuff. But just so you know, if you've had one manic episode ever in your life, even if it's what's called hypomanic or just a little bit manic, you are considered to be bipolar. You can have bipolar 1, 2, or you could have cyclothymia, okay, which is kind of a less intense but more drawn out bipolar episode. Okay, panic disorder, moving into the anxiety disorders. Okay, panic disorder, again, genetic predisposition, brain abnormalities, childhood or family environments. It can be because of stressful situations, just an anxious disposition, a neurotic disposition. And it usually is going to start in early adulthood or adolescence. Okay. We also say people with panic disorder have catastrophic or black or white thinking. This kind of thought pattern or way of envisioning the world is very, very widespread across a variety of disorders. But when we talk about what panic disorder is going to be characterized by what we call panic attacks. Okay. These panic attacks are spontaneous, okay, and unpredictable. Now, I shouldn't say that overarchingly. There are some people, like my father has panic disorder, whose panic attacks are triggered by specific environments, like closed spaces or airplanes or what have you. Okay. But generally speaking, what is so gripping about panic disorder is that the panic attacks are uncontrollable. And that's what makes the person who has them so scared. Okay. What is a panic attack? Okay. A panic attack is going to have many very physiological symptoms. Okay. You're not going to be able to breathe. Your heart is going to be racing and have heart palpitations. You might feel like you're going to throw up. You might think that you're actually dying. You might be sweating bullets. You have this overwhelming anxiety of another attack. Some people actually dissociate from their body during a panic attack and kind of will see themselves having the attack. Okay. Now, because this is so horrifying for the person, and like I said, because they're so unpredictable, many times panic disorder is also going to coincide with what we call agoraphobia. Agoraphobia is from the Greek. It literally translates into fear of the marketplace, okay? And it's really like fear of open spaces, fear of leaving the house, okay? So these disorders will be what are called comorbid or occur together because people are so scared that they're going to have another panic attack that they want to be at home if that happens, that they can control it, that they are not going to be out in public, or that being out in public is going to initiate that panic attack. Okay. I've been reading a lot about, psychological issues related to the pandemic in our country and various other countries. I do find it somewhat interesting that the incidence of agoraphobia in the wake of COVID-19 has gone up dramatically. Even where the countries are kind of coming out of it, like in China, people are still very much afraid to leave the house. Okay, so agoraphobia, which used to really only be, not, I shouldn't say only, but used to be mostly associated with panic disorder, is now becoming this thing outside of something associated with panic attacks. You're just scared of leaving the house because of the threat of disease. Okay. And then OCD. Okay. OCD is an anxiety disorder. In the DSM-5, they actually classify it as an obsessive and other related disorder. But I think it helps to just kind of group them in these umbrella topics where it tells you kind of what disorders tend to run in families together, etc., like that. OCD is going to have a genetic component again. Okay. It's going to have, sometimes there will be some brain communication difficulties, some neural pathways are crossed, or we look at certain parts of the brain that are overactive or overstimulated. We can see someone with OCD has really has various parts of the brain that have just tremendous amounts of brain activity, and we want to kind of shut that down. Hormonal imbalances, neurotransmitter imbalances, insecurity, family life circumstances, anything that could trigger intrusive thoughts and eventual, a necessity to quiet those thoughts. Okay. Now, what students frequently do not understand is that OCD is made up of two things. Okay. Obsessions and compulsions. Okay. An obsession is an intrusive and overwhelming thought. Okay. It's a thought. So it's not an action, it is a thought. So common obsessions in OCD are going to be things like being dirty, that you've hurt other people, that you're responsible for protecting other people's safety. Okay. Now, these obsessions just kind of put the person into a hyperdrive state of anxiety. So because of that, the person is going to feel like they need to do something to quiet or alleviate or mitigate that anxiety. So what do? They do actions. We call those compulsions. Okay. Compulsions are repetitive actions that are used to help alleviate the obsession. So common compulsions in OCD would be things like cleaning, repeating words, checking the locks, touching things, turning on and off the lights, washing your hands, counting, symmetry, and organizing. Okay. It is important to understand obsessions are thoughts, compulsions are actions. Okay. I'll be a little bit vulnerable here, and I will tell you that when I was your age, I had OCD. Okay. I did from my earliest memories, I did have a lot of obsessions of bad things happening to my family. I think it's rooted because my mother passed away when I was very young. But regardless, from the time I can remember, I always had to count things in fives, and I would have to touch things 5 times, and then 5 sets of 5 sets of 5 sets of 5 sets of 5. Okay, and I did this as a child all the way up into my adolescence until it kind of became so obvious that my parents kind of said, "What are you doing? Like, this is very strange." And I sought out therapy for it. Okay, but despite the fact that I knew it was illogical, that I knew that the compulsions weren't doing anything, I couldn't stop at the time. The only way I was able to stop was through talking to someone about it and through cognitive behavioral therapy and medication. And, does it mean that I'm cured? We don't really talk about, disorders being cured, but managed. In the wake of the pandemic, have I maybe had more obsessive thoughts? Perhaps. Okay. But at this point in time, I'm able to kind of control them. It doesn't overwhelm my life. Because when I was a teenager, it would take me about an hour to go to sleep every night because I would have to touch everything in my room 5 times. And then inevitably I would mess up and I would have to do 5 sets of 5 sets of 5 sets of 5 sets of 5 and so forth. Okay. The reason why I'm just sharing this with you is because chances are that you or someone else you know or love has been touched by mental illness. Okay. And we have to be kind of tolerant and understand that it's a totally normal thing for people to go through. And, if I was sick and I, had to get surgery or something like that on a physical part of my body, people will be very supportive of me. So we should be that same way about mental illness. We should try to erase the stigma because your brain is a part of your body just like anything else. Okay, so that's going to be one of our goals moving forward into the end of the year together. But hopefully we're on the right path with this graphic organizer, and then we'll talk about the rest very shortly. Okay, hope you guys are doing well. Bye-bye.